AITA for ending all relationship with my family? It has now been 6 months since I walked away from the house that shaped me, broke me, and taught me everything I never wanted to learn. 6 months since I stepped out of the front door, carrying only a few bags, a racing heartbeat, and the faint hope that life could be something different, something better. I didn't know what I was running toward. I only knew what I needed to escape. When I think back on these months, it feels as though I've lived 100 different lives. Each week revealing a new version of me. Each day peeling back layers that I didn't even know existed. I've rediscovered parts of myself I thought were gone forever, buried under years of noise, expectations, and emotional exhaustion. I've learned, maybe for the first time in my life, what it means to exist for myself instead of existing as a tool for other people's needs, moods, or demands. Moving to a town where I knew nobody was terrifying in a way I still can't put into words. There's a kind of quiet that hits you when you're starting completely from scratch. A loneliness that sits with you in the mornings when you wake up to silence, and again at night when you realize there's no one to impress, no one to walk on eggshells around, and no one monitoring your every move. It's just you. And that can be both freeing and frightening. But something strange happens when the days start to pass. You begin to learn the streets. You recognize the lady who works at the cafe. You see the same dog walkers at the same time every morning. Your world expands inch by inch. And eventually, the desire to connect again, the desire you thought was long dead, slowly begins to grow roots. It turns into courage. And courage turns into action. And then, without even realizing when it happened, you start building a life you chose. I've learned that finding community takes patience. Sometimes you try and it doesn't work. Sometimes you trust the wrong people. Sometimes you feel like you're back at square one. But then, suddenly, you meet someone who feels familiar. Someone who sees you. Someone who reminds you that connection is worth the effort. And that moment right there makes every lonely night feel a little less heavy. Distance has also given me something I never had before. The courage to set boundaries with my parents. Real boundaries. Not the shaky ones that crumble the moment guilt is involved, but firm, clear, emotional lines that protect my sanity. It took me leaving to understand that my peace is worth more than constant fear, more than constantly shrinking myself to survive. I used to believe that keeping the peace at home was my responsibility. Now I know that preserving my own peace is non-negotiable. But that understanding comes with a cost. And that cost is the time I'm not spending with my younger siblings. This is the part that hurts the most. The guilt hits me every single day. I left them behind in a house I desperately wanted to escape, and the weight of that decision sits heavy on my chest. I pray, quietly, constantly, that one day I can reconnect with them. That one day they'll be old enough to understand that I didn't leave because I didn't love them. I left because staying was killing me slowly, and leaving was the only way I could save myself. I hope that, when the day comes, I can stand in front of them as a healed version of myself. Stronger, softer, happier. Someone who can show them that life can be gentle. But I also know, they may choose never to speak to me again. And if that happens, then that is the consequence of my decision. A consequence that hurts, but one I accept. Moving away didn't magically fix my life. It didn't erase years of trauma or undo the emotional chaos I grew up with. But it gave me something I never had before. Time. Space. Silence. The freedom to feel things without being punished for those feelings. The freedom to break down without being told I was dramatic. The freedom to heal at my own pace, in my own way. Healing has been messy. It's been everything. There are days when I feel unstoppable. Days when I wake up and feel powerful, motivated, capable of handling anything the world throws my way. Days where I swear I can fix every wound in my heart by nightfall. And then there are days when I can barely get out of bed. Days when my anxiety sits on my chest like a weight I can't lift. Days when the idea of leaving the house makes my throat tighten and my eyes water. Days when the smallest thing can break me open. Those days used to scare me. Now I'm learning to treat them gently, like a part of healing that isn't pretty but is absolutely necessary. Healing isn't linear. Sometimes you relearn the same lesson a dozen times. Sometimes you journal for hours trying to understand your triggers. Sometimes you take 3 steps forward and 5 steps back. But every messy part of it is taking you somewhere. Somewhere freer than the place you started. If you had asked me 2 years ago whether I could ever imagine myself living outside my parents' house, I would have laughed. Not because it wasn't a dream, but because it felt impossible. It felt like something other people could do, but not me. And yet, here I am. 6 months later, I can say I'm proud of myself. Proud of the strength it took to leave. Proud of the courage it took to stay gone. Proud of the tiny, quiet progress I make every day. I'm slowly building a life that feels like mine. A life that feels peaceful. A life I choose with intention instead of obligation. There is still so much work left to do. So much healing. So much growing. But right now, in this moment, I'm learning to enjoy the calm. The serenity. The quiet mornings. The soft evenings. The simple routines. The sense of safety I never thought I would find. And I cannot wait to see who I become in a year. I can't wait to see what this new life grows into. For the first time in a very long time, I have hope. Not the desperate, wishful kind of hope, but the solid, grounded, steady kind. The kind that tells me I'm finally on the path I was always meant to walk. So AITA for ending all relationship with my family?